Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of Nights to Know. I'm Dr. Cameron Mackey, and I'm honored to be joining the Wartburg family as the Director of Health and Human Performance for Graduate Studies. Tonight's theme is the science of performance, collegiate athletics. At Wartburg, we know that excellence on the field isn't just about grit, it's about the intentional application of physiology, psychology, and data-driven strategy. As we're discussing tonight, feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A button throughout tonight's webinar. We will be keeping an eye on them, and we will do our best to answer as many as we can during the Q&A session toward the end of the program. Wartburg has a strong history of using data to inform human performance interventions in order to maximize athlete success. This can be seen both through our D3 athletic success and also through our strong undergraduate programs in health and human performance and the sciences. Building on this history, I'm excited to be leading the implementation of two new graduate programs this fall, the Master of Science in Sports Science and the Master of Science in Data Science and Human Performance. Tonight's topic is a timely reminder of the great work having been done here at Wartburg and to share future opportunities to build on this history. But science is only part of the story. The application happens on the field, led by those who mentor our student athletes every day. Tonight, I am thrilled for you to learn from these three leaders who embody the Knight spirit and understand exactly what it takes to turn potential into performance. Now, please help me welcome one of our co-hosts tonight, President Eritzman, the 18th president of Wartburg College, who will introduce the rest of our panelists. Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Mackey. First and foremost, welcome to you. Welcome to Wartburg. We are thrilled that you are here and look forward to launching this programs with your expertise and guidance. So welcome, Dr. Mackey, and so grateful that you're co-hosting tonight. I'd also like to welcome all of you, our current students, alumni, and friends of the college to Nights to Know, a series that explores the amazing work that Wartburg graduates are doing out in the world. Tonight, we're joined by alums who are doing just this. But before we start, I would like to introduce my student co-host, Maddie Baldwin. Maddie, will you please join us and share a little bit more about yourself?
Hi, thank you. My name is Maddie. I'm a fourth year at Wartburg. I'm an exercise science major on the pre-physical therapy track, involved with several clubs on campus, such as our pre-health club, exercise science club, psychology club. I work in the community, volunteer in the community. Overall, just excited for today. We have a great group of alumni joining us today, and I'd like each of you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your career path and how it got you to where you are today. So first up, Matt, if you want to hop on.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Matt Ensign, the graduate of 1995. Kind of got into the coaching profession on accident. I played football at Wartburg for Bob Nielsen. I had a semester left and my eligibility was over. He asked me if I wanted to be a student coach, and that was 30 years ago, and I'm still doing it today. Was a biology student, got my degree in biology at Wartburg. Since then, I've been at a number of different schools, probably every different level from Division III to the Power Four. I was at USC as a linebacker coach, and then I've just been the head coach at Fresno State for a year now, and going on year two and year seven of being a head football coach.
Awesome, thank you. Tiffany, do you want to hop on, introduce yourself for us?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm Tiffany Pins. I'm an '05 graduate. Similar to what Matt just said, I accidentally got into coaching as well. I was a history major at Wartburg, and Jim Conlon was the head coach at Wartburg at the time. I played soccer, and he came up with this idea that I should go get my master's at the University of Northern Iowa and help him coach. And that's how I got introduced to this collegiate level, and I've stayed in it with Division III. I worked at Wartburg for 2 years as an assistant, and then I moved on to Denison University in Ohio, where I was an assistant there for 4 years. I actually did some sports information as well while I was working there, a little bit of teaching, and then I had the fortunate, opportunity to come back to Wartburg, where I was the head women's soccer coach for 12 years as well. Did a lot of teaching within our athletic department, some leadership, and really enjoyed my time. Now I'm out at Washington and Lee University in Virginia. Been here, just completed my fourth year. I'm a faculty member here within our athletic department, and I'm really excited to talk with you all tonight. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Last but not least, Chris, do you want to hop on, introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on tonight. And I feel like I'm a little fish in a big pond here with these awesome representatives of Wartburg. And anyway, my background very similar to Tiffany's. I actually got done playing football for Coach Willis, Rick Willis, and decided that they wanted me to be an intern or a GA. I did my master's at the University of Northern Iowa in exercise science at the time, and they didn't have that program at Wartburg. I would have done ours, but yeah. So then I went on to UNI and did that, and was a GA intern coach, and then I've worked my way up. Wartburg hasn't been able to get rid of me. I've been a lifer as the Knights, and so I was the defensive backs coach. Was my first full-time job in 2008. Became the defensive coordinator and head strength conditioning coach at Wartburg in 2011. And then Coach Willis decided to get out of football at the time in 2021. And that's when I became the head football coach after him. So he was my mentor, learned a ton under him. And so just very fortunate to still be at the alma mater and doing what I love doing. So that's me.
And maybe Chris, just with a little bit of success there too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that. Just a little. So
you've got a lot.
When you have smarter people than you working around you, that usually helps have that success. So yeah.
Well, all three of you have a lot of fans on this call, so we're really grateful for all of your time tonight and being here with us to share all the different things you know about this topic. So, Matt, I'm going to start with you. The first question is about recovery science. How do you integrate recovery science, nutrition, sleep, and mobility into your athletes' routines? And what metrics do you track daily, weekly, and how often to evaluate their progress in these areas?
It's the first question you ask is all about recovery. And anytime you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds, I think education becomes the priority. When I first got to Fresno, we were able to hire 2 full-time dietitians for our student athletes. We have one that works just exclusively with football. The other one works with all of our Olympic sports, but also has a little bit of overlap. We also have a department of food science and dietetics, so we get a lot of interns. And that allows for constant education, constant emphasis of what you put in your mouth, what you eat, what you consume, the calories that are required. We're in the off season right now, so we're probably looking at anywhere between 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day for our individuals that are looking to gain weight. So it becomes, again, what does our nutrition lounge look like? What's the emphasis? We're trying to get bigger, faster, stronger, and so it's a constant one. You talk about sleep. That's something that we talk about. I wish someone would have educated me earlier in my career. Maybe I wouldn't have gone up to the Nighthawk as much and would have got some better sleep. But it's the greatest supplement out there, and it's free as well. And again, but trying to get that through to 18 to 22-year-olds, it's when the body recovers. It's when the body grows. And again, trying to make sure that our kids have a consistent schedule of sleep. And then some of the metrics that we use, we GPS everything, especially during fall camp. Workload is going to be measured. We're going to measure high speed distance. We're going to measure explosive actions, and then total distance. And then we're looking for every week of competition that our individuals hit 90% of their max miles per hour. And those are just a few of the metrics, but those are the main metrics that we use to identify workload and where we're at from an emphasis standpoint. Like when we go into fall camp, we utilize a couple, like we have a lead-in day, we have a peak volume day, we have recovery day. We've done some research as a program to identify that if we can create or set up a situation where we practice, but maybe we take a lot of the long distance or heavy running off our legs, having 2 rest days in a week is going to substantially reduce the number of soft tissue injuries that we have. And so we utilize that during the season quite a bit. For instance, and then that requires me to set up my practice schedule to fit that recovery day or that offload day, if you will. It's a lot of red zone work. It's a lot of short area. We're not covering the field on any special teams. And we really utilize kind of an OTA schedule, 30 minutes of indie, 30 minutes of small group, 30 minutes of teamwork. And then it's a really short, quick practice for us. Some of the force plate is something that we utilize throughout the year. Fall camp, we create a baseline for every kid. Then we're looking for RSI. What's the reactive strength index? We feel like that provides two pieces of information that are critical. One, just overall athleticism of the individual, and then two, fatigue. And that's on me again to help try to correlate what is our practice demands, especially in the weeks where we turn around and we'll play Saturday night. All of our games are at night here in Fresno, just early in the season because of heat, later in the season because of TV. That's what the ESPN tells us. But then all of a sudden we turn around and play on a Friday night. Well, how do we complement practice demands, but also recovery demands with having 24 hours less? And so again, all this information allows us to set up practice to try to enable ourselves to stay as healthy as we can throughout the entire season. Of course, we use Bod Pod, we use DEXA machine for body composition. Again, all things to try to create a better athlete, a more sustainable athlete. I think all the coaches here know that if you can keep your players healthy, especially late into the season, better chance you have of having a successful season. And so we use a ton of different metrics, information. We gather a lot of information. I'm looking right like to my right here. I have a 3-ring binder of every injury that we had take place and what was the practice, when in practice, what was the emphasis of practice, what was the volume of practice that day, so we can try to correlate, and what was the surface we practice on that day as well. And so again, we're fortunate to have our stadium's turf, but we have 3 grass practice fields. We're going to practice on those as much as we can. Again, what does it look like from injury prevention? We all want to keep our athletes on the field as long as we can, but at the same time, trying to push the envelope to how do we get them to be the best version of themselves on any given day and from year to year.
Chris or Tiffany, anything you want to add? Any devices you're using to track metrics?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would piggyback off of what Coach said there with the catapult. He's actually the one who kind of, again, I know Coach Entz well through this coaching industry, and so actually took the idea of getting into the catapults GPS side. It's a little different from a budgetary standpoint, but we can't get them on every guy, but we do use that data quite a bit, and so that's something that's been critical to us in terms of planning practice. Even it can even help you down to, if you get into the system, can help you down to how much energy they're using in each period. So like Coach was saying, you may have to adjust day to day which periods you're going to do, how many reps each guy's getting, to be able to know what they're putting out for high speed reps, and how much energy they're using on a day to day. And it's huge. It's a big part of it. So I think that's something that we're using at our level. And then the nutrition side, as he mentioned, ours looks a little bit different, but we started to use a company called Ekin Nutrition to work with some of our student athletes, and they use an in-body scale with us. So our guys get on every 2 weeks, get on an in-body scale, which gives you, body composition. And then it also gets into, intracellular, extracellular water. So kind of like what carbohydrates are these guys taking in? Which ones does their body use well? And that water goes into the cell, and it can be used as kind of like their gas tank to keep their energy up. And what carbohydrates are they taking in that maybe are more sugary, that type of thing, that's keeping the water out of the cell and causing inflammation and keeping them from being their best. And each individual is a little bit different. So we've been able to use these scans to get a better sense for, what carbohydrates these guys should be putting in their bodies, what foods do they react to the best, and what are they getting the most out of for their performance. And so it's not just keeping an eye on how much they weigh or what's their body composition, but it's also how do these foods affect your ability to perform at your peak and recover. So that's been awesome. That's been awesome for us and been a difference maker this last season in terms of staying healthy and keeping the energy levels up. And then the other metrics, we're really fortunate here at Wartburg to have the elite form technology and the velocity-based training, power output. We haven't gotten onto the force plates yet. I think those are maybe on the way into the exercise science area, but we've certainly been using the elite form and those power outputs. We want our guys to hit a certain level of power, specifically in our workouts during the season, so we're not seeing a drop off. That's been huge for our performance and maintaining that throughout long season. And obviously the goal is to hopefully play 15 games, and you want to try to keep guys as healthy and fresh and still putting out those power outputs. And that can kind of help us know too, hey, if we're seeing drop offs, do we need to reduce some of the things that we're doing day to day to make sure that by the time we get to Saturday, we can be our best. So yeah, a lot of data, as coach said, a lot of data going through the decision-making process now in coaching that I think is so much different than even when I was a player back in 20 years ago. So it's crazy how things have changed.
I mean, I would agree. The students are craving this type of information too that we're working with. Like they're excited. It's not just us coaches who, really want to get into this data and information for their recovery. They want it too. That's what I have found. And it's only getting increasingly something that's really important, not only the education piece, but being able to provide them guidance. Now they have it. What should they do with it? We talk a lot about even just midterms here can be incredibly stressful. And so, refocusing what that might look like. And similar, we play, 2 games a week. And so the recovery, depending on the game and the timing, is going to look different. But I think it's important to note that us coaches are incredibly passionate about this information, but I know the student athletes that are working with, they are too.
Yeah, and just to maybe on top of that, all the data that's starting to get out there now at the highest levels, the Division I side, or see it in the NFL games, this top speed or whatever. There's more data out there that these kids see. So now it's like they can compare and they can see these things, and it's kind of fun for them to be able to know kind of how they stack up with some other things that are going on. And science is finding its way into sports more and more every day, no doubt about that.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Next question for Tiffany to start off. What are the most effective strength and conditioning techniques that you've seen as a coach translate directly to game day performance?
Well, specifically working with female athletes, we have to have such an emphasis on ACL and injury prevention. Not that my male counterparts don't, there's an increase, especially in my sport. So we really see it as a whole year plan to get them into a space in season. But specifically, as I mentioned, a typical week for us is we have a game on Wednesday and a game on Saturday. So to be at peak performance, our lifting routine throughout season, of course, I'm working close with our strength coach, to really get the most out of them. It's this progression heading into game day. And so, we are able to lift, 2 to 3 times a week, again, depending on recovery. And he has really set up a model that tailors it for each of our athletes, depending on their load in the game, going back to some of those things they were just talking about in the previous question. So it's this balance of, we really talk about in season about, maintaining a good spot. Some of my players are in a growth position, so they're kind of working towards something different. But to have them at peak performance for game day specifically is making sure that whatever they have done the previous day in the weight room will complement what they're about to do on the field. And so that looks really different depending on each week and each game. We also do a lot of work pre and post game. I think is so important to highlight to be at our best. I mean, if we are playing a tough opponent on a Wednesday and we got to turn around and play on Saturday, what we're doing before and after the game is also so critical for us to continue to play well. And don't even get me started with the NCAA tournament because we're playing Saturday, Sunday, and that's a 24-hour turnaround. So it's also developing habits for them and how they need to recover. So we have some different things. We have recovery boots. Of course, everyone's heard of the ice bath, but we have some different things that we start to teach them early on that they need to do with their bodies that go outside of, of course, nutrition and sleep that can also help those muscles recover and be ready to go on game day. I will be the first one to say, and I'm very good friends with the softball coach at Wartburg, Jamie, so I'm going to shout her out right now. She's fantastic. As a soccer coach with our game load, I was not a fan of lifting during season early on in my career for a lot of different reasons. I won't bore anybody with, but with education and time, I've now realized when you're working with the right strength staff and that understands the load we're putting on, it's so beneficial during season. Our recovery time is better, our strength is maintained. So to have that ability to not only get in our weight room, be able to work with our strength coach and do those things, I really feel like has helped our success. And again, I was skeptic early on in my career because I was concerned of the load, not only on their body, but the time they were putting in, but it's definitely been beneficial for us.
And then I know that you touched on this briefly. This is just a follow-up. You talked about the ACL prevention, especially in women's soccer. Do you feel that your strength and conditioning staff has been able to take that technique specifically for your sport especially
Yes.
at a Division III school where you're not going to be super, super specific.
Yeah, so that's where that partnership, there's still things in my environment I need to make sure that I'm doing to support that with certain warm-up techniques that we do. You know, we've done some Elite 90, some things that are like sport specific through US Soccer that have the research behind it. And then yes, I work very closely with our strength and conditioning and of course our athletic training room too. It's really important. I can do everything I can to help my athletes prevent those injuries. It's not 100%, but you know, the weight room needs to be a place to support that, not make it worse. And so also just educating our athletes to take that space serious, to make sure they're doing things correctly. And the fact that I get to work with, you know, great people, and I had the same thing when I was at Wartburg, it just makes that environment, you know, really conducive of what we're trying to do. And I'm going to knock on wood. The amount of, you know, non-contact ACL injuries I've had in my career are incredibly low. And I account that for doing things the right way in partnership with all the other areas of our department that are so critical to that.
That's awesome. Chris, Matt, do either of you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, I love what Tiffany said about just injury prevention and utilizing your strength and conditioning program to, you know, continue to have sustainability with your players. And you know, we talk. We're in our off-season program right now, so we're in a heavy lift phase, and you know, we talk about adding extra body armor. If we're going to play 13, 14 games during the course of the year, you know, we need to emphasize, you know, the weight room. We need to emphasize the lower chain, where a lot of injuries happen in the sport of football. But we also need to emphasize that injury management, the ability to bounce back from injuries, can all be, you know, hopefully, you know, time away from the sport can be either eliminated or shortened because of a great strength and conditioning program. One of the things we incorporated this year, this was the first time we did it, and we'll do it again this next fall, is we started to lift before practice during fall camp. The emphasis wasn't to get stronger during that time. It was more of a maintenance program. But what we identified was we were able to shock the central nervous system. We got the body going a little bit. I know Coach Winters does some things like this on game day. We started to do it on practice day. Our players loved it. The lift was about 30 to 40 minutes. Some of it was body weight, but there was still, you know, putting a bar on your back, pulling weight from the floor. It was better time management for our players. Again, if you can do anything, you know, to shorten the day, they're all about it during fall camp. But our injuries were significantly lower during fall camp than they had been previously. And we feel like part of it was because we were able to get the central nervous system firing quickly, and that led to productive practices.
Yeah, and just going on top of what Coach just said there, you know, he talked about lifting. The other thing we started doing, just again, this is with some of the catapult data and seeing maybe the speed at which guys were reaching in practice. You've got to sprint to the level that you're going to play at on Saturday for us. So, you know, with that catapult data, we started doing speed training in season as well. Prior to practice, we would go through our warm up, and then we actually did sprints before we got going, not conditioning sprints, but, you know, sprint, hit top speed, coast it down, take a break, here we go. And just trying to make sure. So we were able to take that data and see that we were getting guys up to the speed and the miles per hour that they're going to hit in a game. And that's significantly, now we did it a lot, but enough. Just we do 3-4 sprints and just making sure we hit that regularly really made a big difference with soft tissue issues that pop up in a game when the, you know, the juices are flowing and everyone's fired up and they're going full capacity. You got to be able to get that done in practice too, to have them prepared. So that's been one of the biggest things I've learned. I mean, I think Coach, you can probably speak to this, but the old school way of coaching football, you know, it used to be how many reps can we get? And, you know, making sure that to ready the body, it was all about volume. And now it's more about quality of rep than quantity of rep, and really, you know, hitting the intensities at the right level that you need to, and then not overdoing that. And so I think that's been one of the biggest things I've seen just through incorporating the data that we receive with our training. It's been really awesome. And then that kind of goes into our weight room stuff too. We really started getting into the velocity based training in the weight room. And what we found is, you know, most of these kids are putting out their top power outputs anywhere from, you know, 50 to 75% of their one rep max. Now it's Division III athletes. You might be looking a little different for Division I athletes, but when I was going through exercise science in the early 2000s, that, you didn't really train at that weight much. It was 80% and above to get the most out of your performance. It's like you start getting up above 80%, and yeah, you're getting stronger and you put out force, but not at a velocity that's going to replicate what they're doing on the field. So that's really, those couple areas have really changed the way we've looked at training. And I think it's been really improving performance, and also, like you guys have been saying, helping with the injury prevention side too.
What, Chris, what you're talking about is creating functional strength versus absolute strength.
Right.
And being able, yeah, that's exactly, what we're based in. Is we'd rather have a more functional athlete than, a guy just use back squat that's squatting 600 pounds. One rep doesn't do anything for me. But if we can hit great range of motion, explode out of the bottom, do some isometric type lifts, all of a sudden now we're creating an athlete that we can take to the field and create better power, a better player, and hopefully have sustainability as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And it also takes some of the ego out of the lifting side too. And some of these kids pop in there and they want to do the 600-pound squat or whatever. The next thing you know, they got a pretty sore back and a sore knee, and they did it all wrong. So,
Right.
it kind of helps a little bit of that too. They're always wanting to be competitive. So, hey, we're not worried about how much weight you're doing. Let's worry about the quality of rep that you're taking. And that's where I think this has really changed that too, even how they feel in the off season.
Awesome. Quick reminder to all of our participants, we've got the Q&A open, so we welcome your questions. Happy to incorporate those, or we'll hit them at the end. So please don't hesitate to use that Q&A box for your questions for our panelists. I just want to pause and say, I'm looking at the list of all the people on this call tonight, and there's just a lot of fans, a lot of Wartburg fans. And Chris, this next question is going to come to you. But I know to hear the three of you speak and to listen to all the things you're doing as coaches, for all of us that get to come to your games and performances and matches, it's amazing to hear all this. So thank you for sharing all of this with us, and especially for all the people that are on the call tonight. So Chris, D3, right? We know that D3 for me is love of sport. These students come, they're incredible student athletes. We balance their academics with their athletics, but they're here because they love to play. So if they don't have professional aspirations, which is one motivator, what would you say is your key to motivating players to give the best during practice and on the field?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that I look at that. One can be a little bit more on the scientific side, which I'll talk about here first, because that's kind of what we're doing here. But there's also a component of, actually doing it for the person next to you. But from my standpoint, one of the biggest motivators we found is this idea of record, rank, publish, right? Like, so anything we're doing, we're recording. So all this data we're collecting, we're recording it, and then we're ranking the guys on our team, maybe by position or by side of the ball or as overall as a whole, and then get that out there and let them see it. And then that creates that competitive nature in these guys, really creates a fun environment. It's not like, hey, we're going to be at each other's throats to be the best. It's more, you're just getting a little bit of to have the bragging rights, I guess you'd say. And it just gets things, they have fun with it. They enjoy it. That's what, like you said, they're not here. We're not paying a bunch of money to play. So anything you can do to kind of get that competitive side and work to that, you're going to get the most out of those athletes, and they're going to have fun with it. And that's a big part of it. So, using the data that we're able to collect has been great. The other way that this elite form technology I mentioned in our weight room, one thing that's really cool about it is it gives them live feedback. So when they're doing a set, like Coach mentioned, using squat as an example, we can set a certain velocity range that they're supposed to hit or a certain power output they're supposed to hit. And if they're in that range, the screen on their, like the iPad in the weight room, will go green. So they know, okay, yeah, it flashes green, I'm where I'm supposed to be. Or it flashes yellow, and that means I just broke my old record. I just set a new PR. Or it might flash red, and that means, hey, I'm not in the zone that the coaches want me to be in for today. And so kind of that immediate feedback and seeing that after every rep that they're doing is a pretty good motivator as well. And then even within that system, we're able to create competition to where it'll actually put a little ticker tape going across every screen. When that session, someone breaks the record for, hey, that's the best velocity of this session, all of a sudden I'm on my platform, and on my iPad, I see somebody else's picture and name go across there. Well, hey, I want to make sure I get that done. Here's what I got to do to beat that, And so, again, just any way you can create competition like that, I think really helps motivate these kids, and I think that makes a lot of fun. And then the other part I mentioned is obviously just caring about each other, like celebrating each other's victories too. We get a lot into the data and all that stuff, but even with our off-season training right now, we'll have little mini competitions that don't really even have a lot to do with football. It could be winning a game of paper, rock, scissors. It could be it could be a plate hold. It could be a push up competition, something that way. But a couple guys competing, and then hey, whoever wins, the rule is the guy that wins, the guy that got beat by him, has got to go pick him up, hold him up like we do after we score a touchdown, and celebrate that guy for his victory and for his success. And that's you want to breed that within your team. Is just like, yeah, be happy. Doesn't matter who did it, who gets credit. Hey, we're all in this thing together for one goal, and let's go get after it. And so I think you start getting that competition going, but then you add in that kind of creating that bond amongst the group that we're happy for everyone else's successes, and then we've got something going. And so I think that's a big reason why the guys in our program are pushing themselves. Is they care about the person next to them, and they know everyone's counting on them to be their best. And then, yeah, the competitive side, there's just a competitive edge that you have as an athlete, especially when you get to the collegiate level. It's kind of what drives you. So.
Matt, Tiffany? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree. If I joke that if I bring competition or food, my team's going to have a good time with each other. So, but I also think I want to highlight when I know with, as a place like Wartburg, everybody's so supportive and everybody wants to see you be successful. And that can be such a huge motivator. So when I think about exercise science students potentially working with our teams, when I was there, I got to work with Dr. Weston, and he did a lot of our polar stuff. And there is just this excitement that everyone's rooting for you and they want to see you be successful. They want to see us host the NCAA tournament, things like that. And that in itself is just such an amazing environment for your athletes to be exposed to. Other teams doing well and being really committed, they're not getting in the weight room and are, around other athletes who aren't having that same drive, even though they're on another team. So the environment also outside of the one I create is huge. And that's really special. And that only happens at certain institutions, especially at the Division III level. And when you can find that, it's really unique, but it's so supportive of our programs.
I think one of the areas that we probably dive into, and I'm going to step away a little bit from some of the training, but we create a profile and we created a list of traits that we're looking for when we recruit student athletes. And so, I believe this is kind of one of the parameters for us. Character is probably the number one thing we're looking for. I think we'd all be hard to not agree that if we recruit high character people, typically they're intrinsically motivated, they're self-starters, and I don't have to worry about it then. They're trying to find ways to stack good days, and we all know that if we can get a little bit better, 1% better every day, Coach Pins talked about creating an environment of improvement. If we can do that every single day of the year, that's 37 times better. We improved. So I think sometimes it starts with just the people you allow into your locker room, the people you allow into your team room. You can find the right people. You can find those intrinsically motivated individuals out there that are always looking to better themselves. And if you have a team full of those, or a team full of servant leaders, people that want to take someone else to the top with them while they're going there, then I don't have to be the center of motivation. I need to create an environment where that's already there. And again, I think Coach mentioned it. If you can get everyone within your program aligned and talk the same talk, from nutrition to strength and conditioning, from academics to athletic training, all the areas talking the same language, then all of a sudden you've created an environment of improvement, and that's just what you do.
Yeah, no doubt. And kind of building off that too, with one of the things that we try to do, I think, like you were saying, Coach, get the whole team on the same page is, we do like the super team thing in the off season. So like our seniors we have a draft and we give points for not just for what they do in the weight room or their athletic side, but also for academic performance and for community service. Hey, are you being involved in the Wartburg community, the Waverly community? How are you serving the people around you? And so within your team, they draft, they start figuring out, okay, who are the guys that are really involved? Who are the guys that do a good job in class, not just the guys that show up athletically? And you start to value those things. And then within those groups, then now that's another way to create that competition, not just to be a great athlete, but to do things the right way on your campus, and then all of a sudden that becomes how your team operates. And the other thing we did within those super teams is goal setting. So sometimes you put these goals and you might write them down on your own. You put them on the side here, and we started putting them on Google Forms. So, hey, on your super team, everyone, you're going to set a goal for what you want to do physically, what you want to do academically, and something that's going to just raise your level on a day to day. And okay, you got 3 goals, and you're going to put those in a Google form, and everyone on your super team is going to see those. And then each week we're going to meet as a super team, and I'm going to tell the guys in the team, hey, I either did a poor job this week on this, or hey, here's the steps I took towards reaching the goals that we've got set here, and just trying to have some accountability that way. And I think, again, just all those are motivators to help these kids, reach their full potential. I think Coach Entz said it best, trying to be the best version of themselves, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, next question is going to go to Matt. I know Chris especially will probably want to chime in with this. It's talking about research projects and internships, 2 things that pretty much all Wartburg students are well and familiar with. But Matt, how do you see applied learning like research and internships benefiting future coaches in real-world performance settings?
Well, I think anytime you can get hands-on experience, one, it's a resume builder. 2, it's just it's you don't realize how valuable that experience can be, especially as you start to try to navigate getting a job, finding employment somewhere, creating opportunities for yourself. And so I remember doing my senior research project for Dr. Ventullo years ago. I'm aging myself right now, but that was a long time ago. I think he's retired now. But again, first opportunity, probably where I realized that maybe some of these numbers and some of this research is intriguing. And in my world, numbers don't lie. They're factual. They give a story. You just got to be willing to peel back some layers and find out. But in the world of college athletics, there's so many opportunities for young people to create further experience, resume builders or resume building opportunities with internships. When I was, coming out of Wartburg, there weren't nearly as many. I mean, there's positions in strength and conditioning, in nutrition, in recruiting, in scouting. There's so many areas that people can get this real world experience now, where 30 years ago it was everyone had 4 GAs and you were scrambling like heck to try to find one of those. And if you got one, you better take it, because there weren't very many out there.
Yeah, Chris, Tiffany, did either of you want to add on to that, or?
I think just being surrounded too by, younger individuals who are like in the trenches every single year too. I mean this, right? I mean, I'm getting older every year and I'm doing research and things, but to have and be surrounded by, individuals, and when I say young, just young in the field, but to be around and they're in like the most recent data and information, it's so helpful because things change and pivot, and to have that at your forefront or right on your fingertips, I think as a coach is really helpful, but also really helpful for those young professionals to be around that and be able to apply it to the athletes in the moment.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to get at is, I've been sitting here talking about all this data that we can collect, but, I can't tell you that I understand every last bit of it. So I'm super excited about this next step that we're taking at Wartburg with expanding the exercise science area and some of the master's programs. I mean, yeah, that's a coach's dream right there, best friend. I mean, we've got all these cool tools, and again, I got a little background there, but some of my background, as Tiffany's saying, these younger kids, I'm not probably up to speed the way that they are on everything, and so to be able to take some of the data that we can collect and have someone that knows a little bit more about it to be able to analyze it for us and give us a little bit more, hey, this is what it means. And I think it's a great experience for those students to be able to do that and to learn that as well, and set them up for their future. And at the same time, our current programs are benefiting from that in a really big way. And I do think really awesome that Wartburg, with just the technology that we have available for the students, because that is the future that continues to be the future of, if you're going to get into coaching, into strength and conditioning, into sport coach, whatever it is, just the understanding of how to use those devices, how to collect data from them, and then how to analyze it and put it into application. that's invaluable experience. And I think that's going to be a huge thing here.
So I think we're a little bit into our next question, which talks about kind of these partnerships between athletic programs and graduate programs. We talk about data, and Chris, to your point, it's not even just the volumes of data, it's the time to analyze it. It's the time to be curious about correlations between the data and what you're seeing both on the field in practice and, during games, injury prevention, Tiffany, to your earlier comments. What else do you need as coaches, and you want to have the highest performing teams, and you think about what graduate programs could offer you in terms of those partnerships that could make your players even better? Tiffany, I'll let you start with this one. What partnerships would be helpful to you for optimal peak performance?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to note that first off, like coaching staffs are being stretched more than ever. In a positive way, we get additional resources in the off season where we get to work with the team, and just the dynamics of the student athletes that we're working with demand more out of us. And so that awareness is helpful as we delegate. And that is key in order to run a successful team. So being able, I mean, for me, when it comes to women's soccer, having an understanding of, well, what we already talked about, injury prevention, but also how can I get them more explosive and faster? So being able to work with someone directly, obviously within our strength room, but within the exercise science of what exactly should we be doing with certain individual athletes. I have a variety of very athletic women on my team, but that need little tweaks here and there, and the same thing doesn't apply. So to be able to work with someone in this area that could give me some more specific information of like, hey, this group of athletes, here's what they need in order to get faster, or here's what this person needs to deal with this injury. That would be something that outside of some of the other things that already are provided to us would be game changing. That really specific information so that we can tailor our off season, our summer training, so they can come in better than they were, because they want to grow, and we have such a small amount of time to get them better. So to have somebody that I could work with directly, that would be amazing.
I would think,
go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
I would think, just having people that you can trust that, again, coaches wear a lot of hats on a daily basis, but having people that you can surround yourself with that can take the data, can take the information, maybe narrow it down, simplify it. So that way, like Coach Penn said, we can incorporate it, we can utilize it. We can find ways that it can create an advantage in our training, in our ability to stay healthy. And just finding ways to allow the players to become better versions of themselves. And I think by getting the right people around your players, all of a sudden they become huge assets, because typically when you find young people coming into the profession, they're closer in age to your student athletes. And so if there's someone there they can trust, a resource, someone that's an expert in nutrition, someone that's an expert in strength and conditioning, I think that's huge. I mean, if Wartburg had someone that was big into the analytics, and Chris called me and said, hey, we have someone, we have 5 strength and conditioning coaches, and one of them, their job is to deconstruct all this information that we get from our GPS and ground plate and take it and give it to me in an understandable method. And so, but again, if I know someone that knows somebody, and we can create trust first, that they know what they're talking about, and credibility, I think that's a huge asset.
Yeah, no doubt. And like you guys have been saying, just coaches wear all these different hats, and we try to be experts at everything, but obviously we aren't experts at everything. And so I also think from a student athlete standpoint, when you have someone who is an expert in an area that can maybe talk to you about that, like Coach was saying, okay, hey, this is about nutrition. Yeah, I mean, they're looking at me and thinking, this guy doesn't know anything about nutrition. Look at him, but so, okay, I'm going to take some nutrition advice from somebody who maybe like, hey, it seems like they know what they're talking about. And then it's a little easier. Like you said, they build that trust, and now you've got another person in their corner that's helping them, and they're more of an expert on that. And there's, as a coach, you do want to wear all these different hats, but then as the calendar changes and you go from one month to the next, sometimes of the year you have a chance to be an expert in that area, and the next month you really don't. I think of the nutrition side. I mean, we've always tried to help our kids with their nutrition, but once you get in the heart of football season, I don't have time to go through and look at their food logs. Like I'm trying to get the game plan ready, and so I need somebody else to be able to make sure that they're doing the right things there, and I'll help hold them accountable and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to. But if someone can help me analyze that and take care of that same, so again, that's what I look at is like, yeah, just extra hands that we can trust and that the kids can trust and get to know. And that's just another way that they have more relationships and more people involved with their process. And that, again, that motivates them. The more people that they see supporting them, that's going to drive them to be their best.
I think the other thing I just want to add on is exposure to sports. I think, in exercise science, I'm sure there'll be, sports that students are more, want to be a part of, but the more exposure they can get to, so that, I would want somebody who has women's soccer experience, and that might not be like their first love, but, the more exposure they can have with the different sports teams, I think long term will be helpful, even if they start to kind of narrow down where they want to be, just to be able to interact and have that experience, I also think would be helpful.
Tiffany, the layer I'd add to that is that I would love to see our female athletes have female specialized sports performance guidance. I think that's an area that's lacking in general, but
Yes.
it's something that I think we could really be thinking about.
Yes, sir. We could talk hours. There's all this new information out there with menstruation, and like I'm deep into it, and it's fantastic and so could be so helpful. So yes, agreed.
Yeah, that, and I mean, as a former women's lacrosse player, I'm with you on the ACL prevention stuff. That's something that only recently started being like hammered in the last like 3 years, and that is something that has been happening forever. So seeing that, especially as a student involved in research, if I could have made that my whole research project this year, I absolutely would have. But that takes a lot longer than 4 months. So all right, kind of pivoting here. This question is going to be for Chris to start off. How do NIL opportunities impact an athlete's focus in your experience on training, performance, and what strategies have helped to maintain that balance as those NIL rules have changed in the last couple of years?
Yeah. So obviously at our level right now, I mean, I'm not, maybe some other ones that are, but we're not really into the NIL realm as much. And so to be honest with you, probably the technology and all the things that we're talking about, that part of it is a big sell for us, because we're not going to be able to, it's not about how much money you're going to make coming to Wartburg, to be honest with you, as an athlete, but it's about how we can develop you. Okay, how can we help you, again, as Coach N said, be the best version of yourself? And when a kid can come to our campus and we can take them into our weight room and show them elite form, we can show them the data that we've gotten, from Catapult. We can talk to them about how we're going to help them with their nutrition and the data we have there and all this. I mentioned the record, rank, and publish. It motivates the kids, but it also shows people that we're trying to get to come to our program, like, this is what we've been doing, for our student athletes. So, hey, we may not be able to compensate you for what you're going to do here, but if you buy into what we're doing here, you're going to have a chance to be the best version of you. You're going to have a chance to reach your full potential, on the field athletically, but also being surrounded by other student athletes that are motivated to play and to compete just like you are. I don't know, I think most student athletes are at Wartburg because, they, number one, want to get their degree. Number two, they love the sport they get a chance to compete in. And number three, they love the people they get to do it with. Okay. And if you can get to a place like that, that also has resources like we have here, that you can see how it can help you be your best, that's going to be a great way for us to, bring athletes in without having the ability to necessarily, have them motivated by how much they're going to make in the bank account. So obviously I'd love to be able to give them NIL if I could, but at the same time, I appreciate that about the people I get to coach, is that, their motivation isn't anything about that part of it. It's about truly enjoying the sport that they play and enjoying the people they get to do it with. So yeah.
And Matt, I know that you probably have a little bit more experience with dealing with NIL stuff, especially as a head coach in Division I,
Yeah.
transitioning into the Pac-12, if you want to touch on that.
We are fully immersed into revenue share here at Fresno State, and so it does create. It's you have to have a different thought process to go about it. I mean, some people could say that maybe we're trying to get closer and closer to what the NFL structure looks like. It has created a need for some other personnel within our department. We have utilized a ton of statistical data from the NFL to determine the money allocation that we're going to put into each position group, into each individual player, and what that looks like. And so we do, again, it goes into analytical breakdown, statistics. We're utilizing those. But one of the things that I know the question was, how do the opportunities impact our training? They don't really. One of the things that we do here, I know exactly what we're doing from a revenue share standpoint, but I don't have any of those conversations with our players, because I don't want it to ever blur the lines between, if you're not getting it done between the white lines, Coach Entz can have a conversation with you at any time. And it's not about money. It's about production. It's about effort. It's about performance. And so we're not going to lose that as our premise. We're not going to lose that as the baseline or a standard within our program. Just because you may make a little extra or above and beyond what your scholarship looks like, you still have to perform. You still have to play to our standard. And so everyone's held to the same standard. And that's one way that I try to emphasize that is by, again, I don't have any face-to-face conversations with any of our student athletes on what they're making or what it looks like. I want to keep it. I want to keep our relationship more about their performance and who they are as individuals, rather than a dollar sign behind every conversation.
So we've got about 9 minutes left, and a pretty good question from one of our alums who is studying sports psychology. So I'm going to give it kind of a two-part question here. Any thoughts on sports psychology, graduate students helping in that space, ways that you are incorporating any type of mental skill training or mental side of performance? The secondary piece of that question is mental health. And I think, we're thinking a lot about the NCAA is thinking a lot about mental health for our young people, especially for our student athletes. So thoughts on either side of that question about sports performance as it pertains to sports psych or mental, kind of mental performance, and or the mental health side of what you're seeing in today's athletes. And I'll just open that up for the floor.
We've brought in, we have psychology as a major on campus. So we have used some graduate students to come in and talk about performance-based, sports performance, imagery, clear mind, fast legs type of things. Learn, burn, return is kind of a term that a lot of our kids have started to utilize now, learning from experiences, but then getting back into the competitive mode, not allowing a bad play or a bad situation to turn into bad days. And then we have someone that we bring in from off campus that is, again, someone that we as a program pay to come in probably 3 to 4 times a year. That helps with some performance enhancement. Again, I feel like it's important to bring a new voice in. I think that a lot of the things they emphasize are internally here, but sometimes, for my own kids to understand something, sometimes the neighbor needed to say something to them. And so just getting a different voice, I think is always a valuable, even though the messaging might be the same.
I mean, definitely there's so much research and information out there how imagery and mental preparation does affect your performance. And so we have slowly started to implement that within our program here, taking time, it's in a variety of settings. We, whether it's before practice, we've also tried to teach them how to do it on their own. So it could be more pregame and walking them through the steps. The other piece, when you talk about mental health, it's also just creating a space. We did something this last season called Mindful Moments on Friday, 5 minutes. They got into groups and we did something. We had a map and they had to talk about where they were at in the map and connect it to the things that went on that week. And it was a huge hit. They just got to be for 5 minutes before practice at the end of the week. And it's something was very small, I thought, and it went off huge. So within every team, it's going to look a little bit different. What do they need? But I do think creating a space and a time where they feel like they can even just talk about what's been going on in their week goes a long way. And there, of course, we need other resources and things like that. But some of these smaller things, because they're just under a lot of pressure, a lot more pressure than I ever was as an athlete, between school. But that's something else. I mean, so we do both of them. And I think, they can be one and the same, but they can also have their separate spaces as well.
Yeah, and I think so one thing that I thought was awesome this year from the mental health side, which, as a coach, that's a huge part of that of your job is to be able to relate with these kids and when they're going, especially in college, right? It's a time of life where a lot of changes are happening. Young, the first year kid coming to college, being away from home for the first time, having independence, trying to balance the schedule. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. And so I got to give props to Ryan Callahan. He did a great job for our coaching staff to get trained. He brought in the kind of the mental health first aid. We went through a mental health first aid course, which a lot of us have gone through, like the CPR first aid and all that, but this is more of the mental health side. Like, what do you do when these situations arise? How do you respond? What's the best way to support these student athletes? Who do you turn to on campus when you get to the point where you need that help? And so I think that was a great tool for me and for our coaches at Wartburg, just to look at that in a little different light and to know how to respond and react in those situations. So when individual situations arise, you know what steps to take. And that came into play, for me, this fall with some of our athletes. And so again, especially in the sport of football, where being that kind of that macho, however you want to think of it, that mentality, and admitting that you may have something going on with your mental health, that's hard to do. And especially for males at the collegiate level in the sport of football. And so, like I said, just to know how to address that, know how to work through that with them, that was huge. So I think, there's helping the student athlete, and there's also making sure the coaches are trained in a way that they know how to handle those situations. So that was great. I really appreciated that opportunity.
All right, lightning round for the last question. I think this is a good one. If you had no GPS or monitoring tools, you work at a high school, what are you going to do to collect data?
Well, I mean, I'll just start with really quick in the world of soccer. I would be at least like tracking the minutes that they're putting in. I would also be looking at that load of minutes though, and that's what I used to do like a long time ago when I didn't have these things. So I would look, yes, she played 50 minutes. But going back to film and kind of actually understanding what did that 50 minutes look like, that was one way I started to try to help with recovery and load on my players a long time ago. But that's very specific to soccer. But that was something that I did specifically.
I would, potentially stealing the idea you don't have force plate anymore, but could you use vertical jump, which basically you're measuring power, which is mass times acceleration. And could you do that on a weekly basis, something very simple with a vertex in your weight room to determine, are you seeing a decrease in numbers, and could that give you maybe a little bit of an idea if you're seeing some fatigue that's setting in from week to week?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, I know that what we did after Coach Entz came, he was at Wartburg, met with us. We talked to him about how he was using the GPS system. We didn't have it right away, but we did take some data from him looking at, he just said, hey, what we did is we looked at, our camp schedule, and we're maybe talking to your athletic trainers or whatever, just thinking about the knowledge you have of when you get started. Where do you see your kind of injuries start to increase? Where did you start to notice what day of your camp is that starting to happen? Maybe look at readjusting how you're approaching going into that day. I think Coach Entz brought that up to me when he came to campus. It's like, you got these kids training maybe 3 or 4 days a week in the summer to get prepared, but then when they come to camp and they go every single day, that's a whole new load that they haven't totally been prepared for. So how do you adjust that? And so we started doing, like, we call them red, yellow, and green days, but we just basically adjusted the reps. We knew, hey, on a red day, this is the maximum number of reps we're going to allow to have happen. On a yellow day, here's how we're going to do it. On a green day, here's how we're going to do it. And then we tried to kind of create almost like a stoplight situation to where, yeah, okay, we had a green day. We're not going to go back-to-back green days, so we're not overloading the system. We're going to build in these red days. And then maybe another metric to keep an eye on. I know it's kind of a big thing if anyone's ever heard of kind of like the feed the cat system of training, but they use like flying 10 times. So if you're looking at force plate, or maybe you're looking at flying 10s, hey, just like I said, sprint training in season's okay. It's not like you're going to do a ton of it, but if you're doing that consistently and you're getting your flying 10 or whatever metric you're using with your sprint, you're seeing some drop off, that's probably a sense of, okay, yeah, we need to make some adjustments to make sure that, we're not falling off there. So yeah, there's it takes a lot more work when you don't have the GPS. But yeah, it's there's ways to do it. And you got to get creative for sure.
Well, I can't thank all of you enough for your time tonight. I'm going to invite Cameron to come back on and close us out. So thank you all. It's been a great evening.
Yeah, one thing I'll add for the high school coaches is you can always use a stopwatch. Besides the vertical jump, stopwatch, and agility drill, use that speed ladder and the dot drill and have at it. But tonight really provided an incredible and unique look behind the scenes for elite college athletics. I want to thank our panelists for an amazing discussion, proving that the Wartburg way translates to success at every level. And if tonight's discussion sparked an interest in the science behind the sweat, I invite you to learn more about what we're doing here at Wartburg in our undergraduate and graduate health and human performance programs. Be sure to save the date for our next Nights to Know event on Tuesday, March 10th, and this will be featuring alumni working in the field of student affairs. Thank you for joining us for our Nights to Know. Have a great rest of your evening and go Knights.